Welcome back to Box 2, myself, Jamie Jones-Buchanan, in partnership with Best Western Hotels GB, who in 2025 are rolling out their Year of the Free Breakfast campaign. For more information, go to bestwestern.co.uk/free breakfast. Terms and conditions obviously apply. Now, welcome to Box 2. As always, we've got a very special guest in studio this time around. They're always special, but this is a very special world-class athlete. It is, of course, the world-famous Geva Mentor, Leeds Rhinos netball player. Now, if you know anything about netball, you won't need any introduction to Geva Mentor. If you don't, then I could quite simply be talking to Serena Williams, or I think even Roger Federer has been mentioned as well in your book in terms of calibre of athlete. How does it make you feel when you get compared to athletes like that?
That's pretty cool. Maybe we'll go with Coco Gauff, as she's quite recently run the Roland Garros at the moment as well. So yeah, I mean, it's an honour, and I think when you get that cross code that you can give that comparison to people, particularly if they don't know the sport, then it gives you that idea of where that athlete's been, what they've managed to achieve. But yeah, thank you. Very honoured to be here and to speak with yourself.
No, the honour's all mine. And just looking at the list of accolades, we'll unpick a little bit of this as we go through, but 175 caps for England between 2001 2023, making your debut as well as a 16-year-old. I believe you're still the youngest caps player.
I am, yeah, still hold that record, so I'm not sure if it's in the record books. I used to get those many years ago, but yeah, it's a pretty cool feat to have.
At 15, you got picked in as well, brought into that squad. The book Leap identifies that really well, talks about that journey, the experience. Just really quickly, what did that feel like as a 15-year-old? I imagine you dreamed about playing international netball to have that experience.
Yeah, actually, it's quite funny. It's the opposite. So I came up through different sports, didn't really know much about netball or the international team, the national squad, and basically got scouted to come along and trial for under-17s, and under-17 event got picked to come along and trial for the Opens. And I remember rocking up to camp at Bath University, where they had sort of fitness testing one day and then a match play the second day. And because I was so young and underage, we had to do one of the tests was basically chest passes against the wall, and all the adults had to do it sort of 2 metres away. I had to do it 1 metre away because I was underage, and it kind of just was an example of the age gap that was different between having, I guess, a junior trialling at Opens. But from that, made the squad, and I guess bided my time on the bench, learning from those around me, and learning that actually this could be a career, this could be a path that I want to sort of pursue, and yeah, and so I mean, I'm so grateful now that there's so much exposure and visibility on our sport that young girls and boys can sort of dream and aspire to be netballers and find that pathway. But for me, I had no idea there was a national squad. There was no exposure whatsoever. So it was just something that I took in my stride, which probably made it a little bit easier being a youngster sort of thrown in at the deep end.
Taking your stride, biding your time, key virtues on your journey. A journey that lasted over, well, such a long time, 20 years, 6 Commonwealth Games, 6 World Cups. Voted the world's best netballer twice. I can see the smile on your face there. And 16 years playing in the ANZ Championship and Suncorp Super Netball in Australia. Now, as a rugby league player, I value obviously the NRL sport in Australia, and I believe the Premier Leagues are over there. You got to experience that. You've recently announced your retirement, though, Geva. After such a long and illustrious journey, just tell me, how do you feel right now?
I actually feel really content. And I think if you were to ask me last year when people were umming and ahhing around it, will she continue, will she go on another year? There was no question about it. It was just, yep, through an off-season, pre-season, and then let's kick on again, where I think through this season I've really had the opportunity to kind of sit and let it marinate and decide that, yeah, I'm very ready. And I think for me it's got nothing to do with the physicality. My body feels fine. I think it is that mental edge. And you'd know as an athlete, like, you've got to have all of those pillars firing to be able to give your best to your team, to the environment, and to honour yourself. And so I think for me, I've just known that the social aspect, the emotional aspect is moving more to being family life, what's next. And so, yeah, I feel very, very ready to sort of hang up the playing dress and very content with my decision. And I know not many athletes have that opportunity to kind of call it on their time. And I'm very grateful to Leeds Rhinos that they've provided me that support and that arena to be able to kind of say, yeah, this is the end of my chapter on the court. Hopefully it's not the end of my chapter within the sport. And yeah, as I said, just feeling very grateful that I've had it on my terms.
It's a valuable word, that content, and it's interesting whenever you speak to Geva. We've done a few little bits, haven't we? Corporate, commercially, and obviously out in the in the schools and those places where you can impress upon the young people what they might want to dream to do and help them find those opportunities. But content's a great word. I guess what is next, based on what you've learned And on reflection, now you've become the person you are today, how are you going to repurpose that into the next chapter?
Yeah, I mean, as you've spoken of before, I was a youngster when I got into the sport, and I really found like I grew in my identity. And I'm not just talking about as a person, I think my ethnic background as well. I mean, when I got into the England squad, there were some other black girls in the team, and I'm from a small town, Bournemouth, on the south coast, where I think at the time you could count the number of black people on one hand. So to kind of have that connection to my roots and my background, know how to sort of manage my hair and simple things like that an athlete with curly hair needs to be able to manage on a day-to-day basis through training. And I think being able to find my voice, being able to kind of mature through a sport, learn from my peers around me, and then become a leader in that. And as youngsters then come through and into the programs and the teams that I'm in, being able to impart and share that knowledge. I think so for me, it's been about finding my identity, finding my voice, I guess fine-tuning my values. I mean, you always have those values that I think come through from your family, come through from your life experiences. But for me, being able to really know that actually, no, this is what I'm about. This is who I am. Now, how can I make the difference and impact others around me? Because I've had an amazing opportunity. I've experienced some fantastic things. I've met some amazing people, but that hasn't come from just sort of sitting back. It's come from speaking up and putting myself out there in challenging moments and times. And I want to be able to kind of do that and bring those qualities into my next chapter, whatever that looks like. And it could be terrifying, the fact that I guess I've had income gratefully through my sport over the last, I don't know, 20 odd years or so. And now I'm moving into a realm where, yes, I've got a degree in teaching and maybe I could fall back on that. But actually, do I want to be sort of confined to a classroom? Do I want to have a broader reach and be able to take all those things that I've learned and have that impact elsewhere? So I'm feeling excited about what the next chapter could hold. I'm hoping doors will open. I'm also knowing that that could be quite terrifying, knowing that I need to supplement the income somehow as well.
You talked about refining your values there. Something I did a lot of, redefining who I was, what I wanted to be seen as. And for me, it was ABC, altruism, benevolence, courage. I learnt that from a lot of my teammates and some of the domains that I existed in that found the most success because of their care, selfless concern for the well-being of others, benevolence, giving, then having courage to get out of your comfort zone. What would you say are your crystallized values?
Yeah, I think for me, it comes back, and I learned that word benevolence through yourself, actually, and I remember looking it up when I first saw that, and I think for me it's that genuine care, and I think if you've got that genuine care, then you've got the determination, the motivation, but the sincerity about what you're doing, and with that comes being able to see through the BS sometimes, being able to kind of push through things and steer others through. So yeah, it's having that genuine care, but it's also staying true to yourself and knowing that you don't have to conform into any particular pathway or route or box, that if you can think laterally and you can get outside of that, then think of those glass ceilings that you can kind of break down. So yeah, they're probably my two key core sort of values that I take through in everything that I do. And there's little ones that you pick up along the way depending what, I don't know, arena or situation you are in as well.
When we think about your book, you talked about netball finding you.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. Certainly for me, I like to pay forward some of that gift of opportunity that I've got. So how are we going to use next netball in the next chapter to find the next Geva Mentor?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, leap was in there not just because I leap around on the netball court, which is the title of my book, but also that leap of faith and knowing that you have to kind of put yourself out there and try new things and know that sometimes you're going to fail and sometimes you're not going to succeed, and you're going to have to take those back steps and find that other route. So I think for me, it's about trying to instill that empowerment in people, trying to instill that things don't always go the right way, but to still take confidence in yourself that you can learn. And we say this in the sport, and I'm pretty sure it's not just in netball as well, that you can learn more from your losses and your mistakes than you can your wins and your gains. So, but it's really making sure that you don't dwell on that and that you find what you can to motivate yourself and empower yourself throughout that. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to writing the next book. I don't know what the title could be, but hopefully a bit of a play on words and I guess a nod to that next chapter and where I want to kind of connect with people and hopefully still impart that knowledge.
There's so much when I listen and read your story that I can sort of relate to my own journey. Being quite a big athletic kid as a youngster, as far back as maybe 4 or 5 years old, even though I was born in August, I was one of the youngest in years, actually September, right? So you was one of the oldest as well, probably amplified it. Having that dual heritage, mixed race, you always had a positive outlook even through adversity and use sport as a vehicle to win friends and influence people, to quote Carnegie there. But even at a young age, starting off in trampolining, I think it was 5 years you went at, and
Yeah.
then understood that because of your physical ability and the way that you was going to turn out, being very tall, 6'2", that it might not have been the sport that you was going to carry on in. So how did you deal with that, and how did that shape you as a person at such a young age?
Yeah, it's probably quite funny. Trampolining, when you put that sport to my name, you wouldn't think that I fit into the ideal sport, the ideal stereotype for that, because you need to be quite short and lower centre of gravity. So, yeah, definitely found out very quickly that that wasn't the sport for me. I think, and some people have the luxury, some people need to go out and search for it or find it elsewhere, but those I guess, values and positivity I got from my family around me. I'm very fortunate. My mum has been super supportive. She's a great sounding board. She's actually very sporty, so she has that background as well. And the same with my dad. But coming from two very different heritage, they were able to kind of blend that together and impart what they've learned along their journey. And I think that really instilled that positivity in me and just making sure that not necessarily you would take no for granted, but you can see the kindness and the positives in things that people do, even though those actions probably don't tell you that along the way. And I think being able to take those attributes into everything that I took, I've had some setbacks in my life, and I've had some probably some racial kind of things that have come across my table, but I haven't seen that because I've seen the beauty and potentially what could have been, whether that intentions were one or the other. I've been able to not let it affect me down to my core, and I think I'm grateful for that education I've had from my family, and I'm not just talking about my inner circle, the wider circle, and the people that I surround myself with as well. And it's very much glass half full than empty. And again, I've used that phrase throughout my life a lot. And I think married to a French person now, the French are very probably the opposite of that. So it's very interesting having those conversations and trying to change that mindset to see things in a more positive light. And from that, the world is your oyster. You can open those doors. You can go through those windows. You don't have to sort of stare at a blank wall. So I think for me, it is just really understanding that some people are fortunate to have it around them. Some people have to go searching for it. But I think if you know who you are deep down, then you can see the beauty in everything.
And family plays a big part in your origin story as well. Your mum appears all the time in the book, which I think is lovely. And your brother Raoul as well,
Yeah.
6'11", just an inch short.
He's a big lad.
That's massive.
Yeah.
Just tell us how important he's been for you as well, going over to Australia with you.
Yeah.
When you went over there at such a young age. You know, what impact has he made on your journey?
Yeah, actually, I'm very fortunate enough that I've had that sort of trifecta, that three-pronged approach with my mum being my confidant, my sounding board, someone who I can speak to, who can be the devil's advocate, and I can just sort of air those things that like, you know, fester around in your head and you're not sure what decisions to make. My brother, on the other hand, is a very tall man of limited words, but he shows up and the action speaks louder. If I needed him, he'd be there in a heartbeat. And my very first contract that I got out in Australia in 2008, my brother actually came out with me. My mum thought it was a great idea. I thought it was a great idea. It worked well to do a school exchange for him because he was still at school at the time, and just to have that comfort blanket almost and that security there. And he has been my rock. And although I feel like maybe I've supported him a lot along the way, I think he's actually done a lot more for me. And just being there through the hard times, whether it's injuries, whether it's decline in performances, losses, broken marriages, moving from state to state, miscarriages, things like that. Like, he's been there for me through every step of the way, and I can't fault that. And then my dad is simply says it how it is, and sometimes you just need that. Someone who sort of sees all the bullshit, sees past all of that, and is just able to kind of say it down the line and just kind of get you back on track. And that sort of that tougher approach, which I'm very fortunate enough to have those three. And again, my family are super important, and it extends out to my aunts and my uncles and my cousins and everyone else. We're a massive unorthodox family and a very modern family, particularly when it comes to Christmas. And you look at I've got stepmums and mothers and half sisters and brothers, and it's a wonderful melting pot. And I think that really shapes who I am and makes me want to take that kind of approach into my life, my chapter, and my family as it evolves.
Family takes many guises. Some of it's genetic. Sometimes we find family in the teams that we're playing. And I just wondered, a bit of a whistle-stop tour. You mentioned 2008 going over to Australia there. Just take us through that journey in Australia, some of the challenges you had with England Netball as well.
Yeah.
You know, staying with that journey in the England team, but actually playing in and with the world's best teams.
Yeah, so my journey out in professional netball started in 2008 and heading out. So I spent the first 3 years in Adelaide, managed to win a championship there, but it wasn't all roses and bells and whistles. At the time, I also went through a really tough patch representing England. I've been representing England for the last 6-7 years or so, and it came at a time where they actually didn't see the value in having athletes out there and wanted them back on home soil. And I actually got banned from playing for England for 18 months.
Yeah.
The toughest thing with that is, and I can understand their decision, whether I could accept it as well, not so much, but I kept it calm, I kept it positive, and I kept the doors of lines of communication open. The toughest thing came when I know the Roses were touring out in Australia, where I was based at the time, and a goalkeeper went down injured. They actually flew her back to England. Another defender went down injured, and I put my hand up and said, I'm here, I'm fit, I'm ready, and they still declined that offer. And you could take that to heart, and I did, but I didn't let it affect. I didn't sulk on it, basically. And again, I kept those lines of communication open, and eventually managed to turn the tide and get myself back into the England setup, which again had been a huge part of my life and had been almost my identity from a 16-year-old up and through until sort of the early ages of 20. And so to have that taken away from me was a huge step, and that's where I lent on my family, I lent on my teammates around me. And it was actually around 2010 Delhi Commonwealth Games where the team also stepped up for me. My Roses team, there's myself and a fellow colleague, Sonia McCloma, who was playing out in Australia or New Zealand, I believe, at the time, and we both basically got banned. But the team were like, we want a medal, we want to win at this Commonwealth Games, and we need these two defensive in the circle with us. And through our persistence and through their support, we were able to kind of achieve that. And then fast forward, I spent 6 years in Melbourne playing for the Melbourne Vixens. It got to a time where then age came into a bit of a factor. I kind of hit 30, hit 30 as you do, 40 now, and I feel like I'm in my 30s. But yeah, where the coach was like, look, we kind of want to move into a new direction. We want some young youth through the team. And I felt like I wasn't done on court. And basically got an amazing call up from a New Zealand coach called Nolene Trura. And it was the most amazing call. She basically, I was on a Roses tour at the time, I think actually in New Zealand. And she said, look, I'm putting together this new team on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. Have you ever seen the movie Moneyball? And I was like, oh, the one with Brad Pitt. She's like, yeah. And I'm like, so I've done my homework. I want to build a team that's got a skeleton. So I want an experienced defender, mid-quarter attacker. Fine, okay. I've looked at your stats over the last few years. You have one of the highest rates in deflections. I love that, and I want to build you with a partner around. I've looked at this South African lass. Her name's Carla Pretorius. She has one of the highest pickups. So I'm thinking, I'll put you in there. You're turning the ball over. She's picking it up. That's possession for our team. And she basically built these players around their stats, putting it together with her skeleton. And yeah, spent 2 fantastic years on the Sunshine Coast in this startup club. We won the premiership in the first year. I remember rocking up into the University of Sunshine Coast. There was no branding. We didn't have a team name. We were aligned with Melbourne Storm, back in a different state. And we're thinking, oh, we'll be Sunshine Coast Storm. It makes sense. And I actually remember driving home one day and I was like, they've gone with lightning. Why lightning? And then this amazing electrical storm happened on the highway. And I was like, perfect. And the storms up there were phenomenal. And the lightning was incredible. And I was like, perfect. And I remember I was in the team with some amazing athletes. We had a fantastic New Zealander, the captain of Australia at the time, Caitlin Bassett, and thought she'd obviously be our natural captain. It makes sense. And after a few weeks with the team, they nominated myself to be captain, which to be nominated by your peers was just, it's quite emotional really. And it really made me want to do proud of not just myself, but for my team and this brand new club. And so, yeah, I steered the team to its first premiership in the first year, from media call, captain's call on the day one with a unbranded dress to then at the end of the season, we had sponsors all over the place. It was phenomenal. And then to roll that into the second year that I spent there with them, we started the season off, we lost our first game. We lost our second game. There was a bit of a thing from the league before where premiership curse. You go on a win one year, you don't even make finals the next year. And we're like, oh gosh, here we go. We lost our third game. Can't remember if the fourth game we won or not. But from there onwards, we changed the tide, and we went through and we won our second premiership in that second year in 2018. And yeah, some of the best years. playing up there with this team, with these bunch of individuals and these wonderful humans that have almost come from all over the world, all over the state, to band together, and we became family up there because we didn't have our immediate inner circle. And I think that really made a difference on and off the court, and celebrating those points of differences from South African to New Zealand to Aussie to English and so forth. And then from there,
I'm
sorry.
waffling on here. No, I love this story because you're talking about being a captain there, and I imagine you started off by saying, you're getting a bit older at the ripe old age of 30. And if I remember it right, 50% of the outcome was voted by the players as to who was going to be the captain. The rest goes down to the administrators.
Yeah.
So for you to come out on top, I think there was 3 of you in contention. Yeah. How much did that motivate and encourage you at that time?
Yeah, I mean, to be a leader, I don't take it by any mean feat. And I've been in some teams with some fantastic captains and leaders. And I guess for me, the important thing was taking those things that I thought really connected with the team, really motivated you as an athlete, but also making sure I brought my own brand and I stayed true to myself, and then did the fans in the community, and knowing that we weren't just a bunch of athletes wanting to sort of push forward. We had to kind of encompass our surroundings and where we were located in Australia, and really bring that connection and that heart into it. And so I took it with a massive honour that not only being nominated by my peers, but then wanting to do an exceptional job and grow through the role. Know that I didn't have to come in as a polished captain or leader, that I was going to hopefully mature and find my feet throughout as well. And it was incredible, and I'm super, I didn't go at it alone. I had some amazing leaders within the team and some amazing support. And I remember one time, and the coach, like Knowles, was just, I've never met a coach like her, and she really gave me that perspective of, you don't just have to be sort of technically sound, you need to have that holistic approach, and you need to know your athletes. And I remember sort of one of her first sessions that she joined us with, she's in the middle of the court, she's in the drill, and I'm like, get out of the way, but she's in there, she's living it, she's breathing it, she's seeing how we're moving, and that was how she connected with her athletes. That's how she saw and got the best out of us. So then when it came to the game plan and what was happening, like, she was in and amongst it and can really kind of connect. And yes, you can feel things as an athlete to adapt on court, but when you come off at quarter times and half times and you need that information, she was in it and was able to kind of really articulate what we needed at that time. And we had a great relationship. And I remember one time, I think it was in the second year, when we'd gone from back-to-back losses, and she's like, what do we need? Like, what's happening out there? And I said, you know what? We just need to get around each other. Let's go for a coffee. And so she cancelled training. I mean, what coach can you go to and say, we're not training today, not on court today? And we all just went and we had a coffee and a croissant, and we chat about different things. We got to know what's going on in everyone's lives again. Not that we didn't as it was, but just to have that time away, taking that pressure off. And she trusted me with that. And then we came out and we had a great training week the rest of the week. And then obviously went on to have a successful season.
Trust is a key word in any type of leadership. Who's been the most influential leader in the mosaic of leaders, I imagine, that you've come across in your career?
Gosh, there's been a few out there. I mean, obviously, coaching-wise, it would be Knowles. She's been one of the most phenomenal coaches I've had. Actually, Tracy Neville, who was our gold medal winning coach for England Roses, obviously a phenomenal family that she's from with Phil and Gary, representing England at football and cricket, I believe, actually in their younger years. What I've really liked about Tracy is she's probably quite a tough coach coming in and really harsh and could rub people up the wrong way, but really seeing her sort of evolve in that space and finding that connection with her athletes and getting it out. But the thing I loved about Tracy, she kept it so simple, and she explained game plans in like stories, so that you'd never forget it. I still remember today for the 2019 World Cup that she took us to in Liverpool, and we're coming up against Jamaica, and they've got a phenomenal goalkeeper, Shamira Sterling, and she's a menace. She turns over the ball everywhere. Like it's scary for attack ends. And she basically said, this is Shamira's house. We're not going through the front door. We're going to go round the back. We're going to come in the window. And then if she's hanging there, we're going to go around the other side. And she just explained things that we still remember to this day, these random stories that people be like, is this elite sport? Well, you know what? It worked for us and it worked as athletes. So just being around amazing people like that think differently, that have that leadership qualities. But I think for me, the captains that I've had, my very first one was Olivia Murphy, and I really liked the connection that she had with her athletes, and she probably led from the front in terms of her on-court prowess. And I remember sharing with her, which was super scary one time when we're in camp, and I was like, oh, what's she going to be like? And she put on wrestling, and I was like, and she was getting in, she was on the edge of the bed, and she was screaming at the TV, and I was like, oh, this is great, she's just normal. And I think that gave me, that said that you can just be yourself. And so when I am sharing with a roommate with whether they're maybe intimidated or terrified by myself, just to be myself, to connect with them. So I sort of learned that from her, and then in a team with Sonia McCloma and Karen Atkinson, who were co-captains at the time, just how you can always have a bad cop and a good cop, and that can work. And that balance of having that, and whether you're a co-captains or whether you're single captains, just having that balance. But yeah, I've had some amazing captains across my time in England, in Australia. It's been phenomenal to kind of pick up different things that I've really admired about them.
For me, listening to the stories around Australia, New Zealand, I obviously reminisce about rugby league and the rivalries in some of those teams. And I did wonder, obviously it's State of Origin over there, it's, I think, the most watched event on television, never mind sport. And a lot of that comes around rivalry. So a lot of your teammates, I imagine, when you're playing against Australia, New Zealand, you're playing against them for England. Were there any rivalries that you particularly enjoyed throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean, it's no lie. Like, there's been a pecking order in world netball for a long time. Australia have held down that number one spot for a long time. New Zealand, and then a big gap. England, Jamaica, we sometimes fight it out for 3 and 4. And I think the biggest thing is we really struggled to get over that mental edge against the Aussies. They just came into every game with that confidence. And as soon as this professional league started up in Australia, where now these teams that you only come up against once or twice a year or at major events, you're now training week in, week out with these athletes because you're in and amongst the team. You start to break it down. They're just as human as we are. They make mistakes just like we do. We can run just as fast. We can jump just as high. So what is it when it actually comes down to representing your country and coming up against them? So I think for me, the battles that I've had have been amazing. And I talk about Caitlin Bassett, who was my vice captain when I was at Sunshine Coast, the current Diamonds captain, a goal shooter. I'm a goalkeeper. So in a club team, we're on the same team. I'm at one end, she's at the other end. And when we play for our countries, we're on each other. We were on each other for that gold medal match that we won in 2018 at the Commonwealth Games. And so it's one of those that, like, in the lead up to the competition for the Commonwealth Games, I'm like, I want to beat you in training. I want to do well, but I don't want to give you all my tricks. I'm not going to show you everything I can do because I want to beat you where it counts on a World Cup. But then I also don't want to demoralise you because I need you up and about for when we come back after the Com Games to be able to succeed and lead and spearhead our team for the Lightning. So they were always the interesting battles, those one-on-ones. And I've come up against some amazing athletes over time, not just being tall, being short, being agile, that have really challenged me. Probably one of my toughest opponents is Captaincy, who Latu, in her international playing career, she played for New Zealand. She was a goal shooter. She was tall, but she was also a big sort of solid girl as well. And so she was hard to get around. She had the quickest hands and feet that I'd ever seen going around. And sometimes her teammates didn't even know what she was doing because she was that fast. And I loved the challenges and the battles that we had. And she was cheeky too on court. And it's one of those odd things as a netballer, when the ball's up the other end of the court, and you'll see it a lot at social netball, the goalkeeper and the goal shooter can often have a chat. And so that's where you can be a bit cheeky and really get to kind of either under their skin or just have that social aspect as well. And so that's what I've loved about the game and the amazing sort of, I guess, opponents that I've come up against.
Have you ever been curious, talking about physical battles? I think I remember reading against Jamaica, got a few elbows in the face, almost seemed to be playing them for third and fourth on a regular basis, a few bronze medals against them. Given your heritage, were you ever curious about that sort of comparison? I know you talk about exchanging kit as well, which you didn't like to do, but you did with St. Lucia, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I remember very closely 2014 Glasgow Commonwealth Games. We played Jamaica in the bronze medal match, and I was up against Romelda Aiken-George, who's actually just overtaken my record for number of appearances out in Australia. And I sent her a good luck message, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to send her one. Like, it's like she's just not only taking my record, but I remember all those elbows over the years that she's given me on court. But you know what? They're the battles and they're the things that kind of like give you that fire in the belly when you are out on court. And yeah, I remember just those flying elbows as a shooter as she's taking and turning with the ball and being clocked. And I think I came off of that game with a black eye and a swollen cheek and so forth. But yeah, they're definitely, it's very physical out there. And I think the thing for me was it was about the learning of that, not only the battles that you can have with these athletes, but knowing that you can also be friends once the whistle's gone and the time's sort of done and dusted. Yeah.
And the Commonwealth Games finally got that gold medal. How was that? Was that the international highlight?
Yeah, and as saying, just coming off that 2014 Glasgow Com Games and sort of set the scene a little bit, we had a really good sort of pool games. We set ourselves up to play New Zealand in, I think it was the quarters or so, and basically winning all game. In the last, I think, 45 seconds, we ended up throwing away the ball. It came down the other end, they scored their centre pass, they scored, they won by one, which put us through into a semi-final up against Australia. And again, we were winning majority of the game. The last minute or so ended up going the other way, lost that. We were deflated. And then to come up against the Jamaicans in that bronze medal match, we had almost nothing left and got absolutely trounced. That was then fast forward 4 years, we held that nasty taste in your mouth all the way through, and then it came into 2018 Com Games, and yeah, that has to be one of the highlights, being able to come away with that medal. But it wasn't all guns and roses. We didn't go in all confident and cocky and knowing that we had it. I remember we turned up in Australia and we played some of the club teams. So it was the Sydney Swifts and the New South Wales Giants. New South Wales Swifts and the Sydney Giants, and we played them as an England side. These are club teams, and we got beat by 25 to 30 goals, and we're like, whoa. And we're looking to go and compete on an international scene against these teams. Anyway, again, Tracy Neville was leading us then, had a girl called Chelsea Pittman in our team at the time, and she knew someone who had a boat on Sydney Harbour. So, you know what, got us all on there, did the social scene, a little bit like the whole Knowles and to like, just do something different, let's get away from all of this, let's not dwell on it. We all went on a fantastic sort of lunch, sail around the harbour, jumping off the boat, in the water, just like perspective. And then we rock up at the village, we go through the round games, we beat New Zealand for the first time ever in a major event. We go in and we play Jamaica in the semi-final, and we're losing by 7 goals at half time, and we're like, gosh, this is almost impossible. They've got an absolute star, or probably one of the world's best goal shooters, and still is now, in Janelle, and it's going to be a tough beat. And here we come out, we managed to win by 1, go through to play the Aussies in the gold medal match, and again, it's tough, it's going neck for neck all the way through. And basically on the buzzer, we managed to score. We missed the goal actually on the buzzer, but it was an obstruction. So our shooter got to take a second shot, got it in, nuts. Like, it was just bonkers. And to do that on Australian soil, I had my mother and brother in the crowd, which was amazing. And it was one of those life-changing moments, not just personally, not just for us as a team, but also for the world order. And a lot of these other teams like ourselves, Jamaica, South Africa, African nations coming up through, who are like, can we ever challenge Australia, New Zealand? Can we ever do it on a world stage? Well, here we go. And now it's kind of set the tone. And then fast forward, coming back to the UK, and just the visibility that it gave on our sport, the showcase that we had, and seeing people now picking up the sport, showing interest. I remember Mum picking me up from Heathrow and driving back down to Bournemouth, and we stopped at Fleet Services, and people came up to me and said, oh, we watched the games, it was amazing, can I have a photo? And it was just like, wow, like, brilliant. Not had this before, and just to see that change was amazing for our sport, but also for women's sport in the country.
Sure, yeah. And success breeds success, doesn't it? It's perpetual. When you get that hamster wheel spinning. And I'm giggling there listening and thinking back to some of the memories that you record of those Commonwealth Games, and some of the celebrities that I imagine you come across as some interesting decor as well. I'll let you read about that. You come across people like, in another world, David Beckham's in there, the New Zealand rugby teams, and they describe them as being like rock stars. What's it like being in some of those environments that you've been in? Yeah,
it's amazing. There's been a couple of occasions where the All Blacks have appeared on the scene, and one of my very first caps, I remember stepping out in New Zealand against Aaron Roddick, and you look over to the side and there's just this row of beautiful, huge men. And I'm like, oh my God, who's that? And then they're all the All Blacks, and you're like, wow, we just watched them on TV. They're here playing a series or whatever in the area, which was phenomenal. And I remember for 2015 World Cup, where I was captain for the England Roses side, we were in the other hotel across the road, the Pullman, and we had the function room at the top, which was great, kind of a team room that we can come and chill out in, so we weren't just always in our room. And for 2 of the nights, we were like, sorry, we can't use it. And we're like, well, why not? Well, the All Blacks are in town. I'm like, okay, say no more. So passing them in the lift and little things like that. And I think the nicest thing is, obviously, we see them on TV and they're a massive team, a massive brand, but they're just really nice guys as well, and they love their netball in New Zealand, so they knew who we were as well, which was phenomenal to be able to have that experience. But I still can't go past 2018 Com Games. We've just won the gold medal. We all get back into the team bus, and these are the things that no one really talks about, where it's like back to normal, like you're on the podium or you're in the stadium. Well, we've had our showers, we're back on the team bus, getting ready to go back to the village. And we sat there, we finally get our phones out and have a look through the wonderful messages and everything. And I remember Helen Housby, who scored the winning goal in the gold medal match, was like, David Beckham's just messaged me. How did he get my number? All this sort of thing. And it was just like, and we're like, wow. And so we're all having a look at her phone and thinking, this is just amazing. And that we have that visibility of someone that we've obviously watched and idolised and is an icon in British sport for so long. And for me, I think I love my Formula One. And after events like that, you get invited to things like BBC Sports Personality of the Year awards, and the one we went to, Lewis Hamilton was there, and it was just and I idolise him. I think he's phenomenal, and I think what he's managed to achieve in his sport, and we particularly talk about heritage and race and coming from a very white male dominated sport, what he's been able to do is crazy, and I love his journey and his story. And so to be able to rub shoulders with him, we had a photo with him up on stage. I made sure I was standing next to him so I could crop out the rest of my teammates as well.
Brilliant.
But it's little things like that just they're the little the advantage, the advantages, the bonuses, the little things that you kind of think back on.
I love the idea of brand and image, and I wanted to just ask you about what you learned at the Sunshine Coast there in regards to it being a new project. Talked about sponsorships, filling the dress as the season went on. I imagine a lot of challenges as well, and I wondered the comparison then coming to UK to play for the Leeds Rhinos, a brand that means a great deal to me. It's given me pretty much everything that I am in my life. I started here as a 9-year-old watching the club, the team, and being able to be a player and have so many touch points on so many different sections of the club. So when you're coming over here, a new challenge for Leeds Rhinos, netball's a new sport, a new game for us. What was it that attracted you to the Leeds Rhinos, and what are some of the lessons that you can bring from those franchises in Australia to the UK game?
Yeah, I think, well, there's two things for me. I really wanted to kind of come back to play on a UK soil. I know I've been away for 15 years playing down under in Australia, and I've still felt the love and the connection from the British community and the netball community and following my career. So for me, it was really important to be able to come back and be able to get around a bit of a road show and see all those fans that had been so supportive of my career. The next thing was looking at where to base myself. I mean, the obvious would be living in France is to base myself somewhere in London because it's easier to fly in and fly out. But having a conversation with Liana, who was the coach at the time, she gave me a little bit of similarities to Knowles, and I was like, I really like that New Zealand approach, and I really like where she's coming from. And then when she spoke about the club, and I remember having a conversation with Dan around what the club brings, the history. I loved everything about that, and having small glimpses of that from big professional clubs that I've been part of, and those sharing of sport codes in AFL and with Collingwood Magpies, and then obviously Melbourne Storm with the NRL in Australia and netball. I love the fact that it's more than just about that sport. It's a one club feel, and coming here, it wasn't just about the rugby league or the netball. It's about the rec team. It's about the women's teams. It's about those, I think there's 7 different teams that are part of this club, and it is the one club feel, and I love that. And I remember one of the first appearances that I did here was about that one club feel and coming together with all the different athletes. And I think for me, and as a stand-up point for the club moving forward, it's definitely making sure we embrace that more, because that is our point of difference, and it's so rich and it's so important for the athletes, but for the community and for the fan base. I think now fast forwarding it through into where netball is, the first year I came in, it was like the end of the chapter for the Super League. Now we move into NSL 2.0, where they're looking to move professionally. They're looking to adopt what's been happening over in Australia. But they're not doing it lightly in terms of they know it's going to take time. We're not going to do it overnight. You're not going to be the next NBA, is what I compare the Super League, the Suncorp Super Netball to in Australia. It's going to be this sort of 10-year step. And I'm like, okay, all for that. For me, my biggest learning this year being part of it is they've got all the steps, but I don't know if they're necessary in the right order. We're focusing a lot on bigger arenas. We're focusing a lot, yes, we want to go out after sponsorship and endorsements and stuff like that, but let's get the product right first. Let's make sure that the clubs are looked after and supported, the athletes and the wellbeing, the technical officials and everything is all up to speed. So the product we're putting out there is then this showcase that the fans can get on board. And I'm talking little things like the live streaming. We've had so many issues this year. Even things having like a live ladder on the streaming would be fantastic. And scoreboards and timing being the right kind of scores and times. So those simple things we need to get right before we go out there and try and sell this, because otherwise we're going to push these wonderful clubs that have put themselves out in this new era into the ground, because financially, how can you support a club when we're still trying to grow the fan base and get bums on seats and get the right kind of broadcasting time slots over the weekends that can really drive it forward. So for me, that's been the biggest thing. And as an athlete, obviously I'm from the inside, and I'm not just talking about that pillar and being trying to push things forward, professional era for an athlete. Yes, it'd be great to have more money. It'd be great to have that elite environment where we are full-time athletes and we haven't got girls coming in from long days at work or at uni or traveling across the country, that we are in and able to base our training regime around that. But we also need to make sure we take care of the other pillars, like the officials, the umpiring. Where's the development there? Where's the support there? At the moment, they're not paid. Yes, expenses are covered, but how can you expect this game to evolve when the important people out on court that are officiating haven't got the support around them? Then what you're broadcasting back to people at home who can't necessarily come to the venues, what are they watching? Is the stream going down? Is it the right scoreboard? And then putting in big stadiums, are we able to fill those stadiums yet? Or have we put it on, I don't know, lunchtime on a Mother's Day, when you know that a lot of people that would come along to netball are probably out taking their mothers out for lunch? So it's just coordinating things like that, supporting, the league need to support the growth of it and maybe just look at what steps we can do in place. And so I've been very vocal about that this year. probably got myself into a bit of trouble, but it comes from a good place. And I think you need those voices to kind of hold that accountable. And I think the one great thing about our sport is we're very supportive. And if we're transparent about things, we're very understanding.
Yeah.
And we can support that and we can understand and we can maybe offer advice and help around that as well.
Supporting, understanding, and it comes from a good place, you just said, because you care, right? Why wouldn't you care? Like, it's giving you everything, I imagine, the journey that you've been on. So as somebody who's a novice still learning about netball, love it, right? I've been to FD Arena this year to watch the Leeds Rhinos netball, and I've got a million questions. We might both get in trouble while we're asking some of these questions, so forgive my naivety. I'm hearing the word franchise, right? Solutions to problems that exist now might never have been seen before. So to use your word, innovate, evolve, then we might need to think a little bit differently and out of the box. So, for example, cricket went from the red ball game to the 100 or T20. It evolved into a different format. The courts, we've had a chat before we started this about the surface. Tennis plays on clay, it plays on grass, it plays on courts, of course. There are different variations of rugby, whether it be Oztag, Rugby League, Union. What's the big thing that netball can do to overcome some of the challenges, attract a different audience to a different generation? The word franchise, sometimes they're not geo-locked, as in, like, if I understand it right, the Giants, they've not got a geographical name linked to it, though they probably understand where that is. When we look at the NFL, they move around. Oakland Raiders, Vegas Raiders. We're going to Vegas in February. The Leeds Rhinos can't wait. What can netball think about doing that they've maybe never done before? Yeah,
I think for me the biggest thing is consistency.
Right.
I think once you've got consistency, then you've got people that buy in and are content with what's going out there. There's so many different things. And I love the fact that they've looked at the rule changes this year with the rolling subs, with the super shots, just to make it a bit more entertaining or a bit more captivating, a little bit different. The rules are being really looked at nowadays is what's the brand going forward? And as the sport's trying to push for an Olympic potential entry in, are we looking at a fast five format, which is like a T20, a shortened format of the game? Are we looking at mixed netball? Are we looking at indoor netball? Like what is going to be the format that's going to go forward? The international game is still pretty standard as it is. Does that now be infected with the super shot and things like that? So there's all those conversations going on at the moment. I think the important thing is, let's bring it back to what's so important about this game. We are a female first sport, but we are inclusive. So I think it's remembering that that's our point of difference. We're not competing against a male code that we're like, oh, it's like netball, but it's not as good, or so forth. So we are the best in the business, and yes, we're trying to bring up our boys and men in the sport, which I think is equally important, being 50% of the nation. But I think there's so many different aspects that you can look at. I don't know where to start exactly, but I do know that we need to not aim too high. We need to have the goal there, but we need to make sure we get the foundation strong to start with. And for me, it comes down to the consistency, the foundation, and then making sure we're looking at all the pillars to rise together, and not just about yes, we want more money in the sport, because from that comes greater venues and things. And I think if I look for us in Leeds Rhinos, we're one of we're the furthest north team now. We cover the whole of Yorkshire, which is a huge county. Before last season, we were travelling around. We were playing in Hull, Huddersfield, down in Sheffield, and a few games in Leeds. And it's, yes, we want to get ourselves out there, but we also need a home venue. And I think it's having a home court here in Leeds, because I talk to a lot of people and they're like, oh, we can't really make it down to Sheffield and back and so forth. But it's also making sure we've got that pathway that then feeds in. So we're not losing this young talent, which is going to bolster us for the future, to teams like Manchester Thunder because they've got a great pathway, or Loughborough Lightning because they've had success in the Super League over the last few years. So for me, it's not just looking at the top end, it's looking at that foundation, at that pathway, and making sure we get the structures there, we get eyeballs on, we get people buying into, yes, potentially Leeds Rhinos at the top, but how do they filter through and make it to the creme of the creme sort of thing?
And how often do you get consulted with your experience and expertise? Is that something you want to do next, to be involved in some of those discussions?
Absolutely. I'd love to put my money where my mouth is, sort of thing. And you know what, I am starting to be more vocal, and you've got social media platforms that you can be, but whether I'm part of working groups, I've not been shy about the fact that I'm there, like, pick my brains, like, let me sort of speak forward. I'm also the fact that I don't mind being chopped off or putting my head out on the line if it makes a difference for those that are to come. And that's just who I am. And that, I feel like, is my give back to the sport and what's been able to sort of generate and provide me with so many wonderful opportunities. So, and I'm not to say that I'd have all the answers, but I do like to think that I can kind of take on board everything and adapt and listen and hear and evolve from there.
Sounds to me like you've got a few more chapters left to write in your next book. Last two questions. Geva Mentor, as you are in 2025, and I know you're very humble, and you start off the book by just saying, I'm a very ordinary person. If you saw me behind the veil, you wouldn't think an awful lot, like we all do, of these little doubts. You've got all these strengths. What would you say on reflection, as the archetypal superhero, has been your weakness? What are some of the things that challenge you in life?
Oh, I'm definitely a yes person,
Right.
which I'm learning at my early years. You can't say yes to everything, because when you're saying yes to some things, you're saying no to a lot of other things. So that's one kind of lesson that I've learned, is to make sure you don't spread yourself too thin, and that you can really put your time and effort into those things that are important to you and important to others. I think my other weakness would definitely be you get givers and you get takers in this world, and I feel like there's nothing wrong with being a giver, but it's just making sure you can see through the people who are taking advantage of that. And I don't think I'll ever change. I think I'll probably still make the same mistakes, but that's where I just have to learn from them, in terms of not going down that same track, although I may make a mistake again with a different approach on things. So I think they're probably my two weaknesses: saying yes to everything, and probably giving more than I can, and people using and abusing that.
They're great virtues to have, though. Pablo Picasso, one of my favourite quotes last year: the meaning of life is to find your gift, the purpose of life is to give it away. Whenever you're giving, good things tend to usually happen. And I guess the last one then, having come to the end of an illustrious and amazing career, great chapter in your life, what legacy do you hope that you've left behind? When people talk about Geva Mentor, the player, what do you want people to talk about?
Oh, I think on court wise, I don't want everyone to ever forget the Geva role, which I feel like I've almost painted it, which is nice. It's basically where you stand at the front of an attacker and the ball goes over their head, because you end up rolling, trapping them, and the ball goes off the back line or you get it. So the Geva role would be fantastic. On court presence, probably the smiling assassin. I think defensively, you have to be really mean and just like you want to absolutely rip to pieces the attack end. And there's nothing wrong with that, and nothing wrong with that approach. But for me, I'd rather sort of kill them with kindness. And that's maybe where I've got the brazen, just to make me look a little bit tougher out on court as well. And then I think just at the end of the day, just being down to earth, genuine, having a good heart in the right place, and wanting to kind of support and develop and empower those around me. And it comes back to my values of just that genuine care, and staying true to myself.
We talk about being an energy giver. There's not many people that give me more energy than Geva Mentor. Geva, thank you for saying yes to this podcast. We've certainly benefited from it. If you've not seen the Leeds Rhinos netball team yet, I hope you'll get across to one of their games. It's amazing. I've loved it. I've adopted it. And you're flying the Leeds Rhinos flag. Thank you very much. Thank you again for joining us in Box 2. Big thanks to Geva Mentor. We'll see you next time.